Clockwerk is the perfect support for pub games because no matter what horrible draft your team has come up with, he has such a flexible toolkit that you will be able to have impact every single game and give yourself a good chance at winning. We're going to rush through the build real quick and then talk through examples. We'll try this format again. Let me know what you guys think of this. But for the skill build, something like this is a really good default. Facets, we're going to talk about that in a moment, but I recommend expanded armature pretty much every single game. And because of that, level 1 power cogs will generally be good, especially at these level 1 fights, to just isolate someone, and then your team can come in and do a bunch of damage. You can also kick the power cogs at people, which is hilarious. And it's actually really good in the laning stage as well, because it's hard to actually get the value from battery assault. You can take battery assault level 1 if you find a slow hero who can't get away from you, especially like at the start of the game. You can take battery assault because it does do a lot of damage, 300 at level 1. If you stand next to them for 10.5 seconds and it does like the 15, right? It takes a while to do the damage. And if they constantly sit in the lane, which is a lot more popular now in the laning stage, or they have summons, or the whole enemy team is all together, then the battery assault is harder to get value out of than it used to be in the past. That's why a lot of people just start with power cogs now, because it's still useful at those level 1 fights and when you find an isolated target, but also easier to use in the laning stage. But it is up to you depending what you see. So I actually recommend you hold the level 1 skill point until you finally decide like what you're going to use. But I would typically recommend power cogs. Most high level players will max battery assault after that because the scaling on the damage on battery assault is really good. And in the early game, it's harder for people to get away from Clockwerk. Later on in the game, there's going to be like BKBs, a lot of mobility items. Maybe they're higher levels, they have low cooldown escapes, right? But in the early game, everyone's low level, has no items, so you can actually get the damage from battery assault, as well as in the downtime, battery assault actually does double damage versus creeps, so you can go jungle pretty quickly, walk into a creep wave, farm all of that, especially in your pub games where there's a lot of downtime, right? You can still get some farm in as Clockwerk. Value point in Rocket Flare at level 4, just because it's a lot of really good utility in terms of scouting, checking high ground, checking people in trees, stuff like that. You can actually get it at level 3 if there's like a kill opportunity, something like that, but otherwise just like 1 point at level 4. And then after maxing battery assault, it's up to you what you max next. If you just need to disrupt team fights, they don't have a great way of dealing with power cogs, most people will max this second and then take the talent after this. You don't need to take it before at level 10 because -2 set cooldowns is the same thing as just leveling up power cogs, so there's no point. Max out the ability, then take the talent. But if they have a good way of dealing with power cogs, or you think vision is really important, you have to find like the Dazzle in the team fight, or there's a Nature's Prophet who's been ratting you the whole time, you're trying to find him, deal with the split push, then people will max Rocket Flare second. This will do a lot of damage to creep waves, so you can like your top, you can Rocket Flare bottom, deal with that. You can try to find the Dazzle in the back fight, hook shot to him, keep him out of the fight, stuff like that. Have Rocket Flare at a lower cooldown and do more damage to split push waves. It's up to you what you think is good in a game, but same deal. Max out Rocket Flare, and then if you're doing that, you can take the level 10 talent for it as well. If you're taking expanded armature, you can consider maxing power cogs first. I really like this build. I think it's really funny. On paper, I think the battery assault build is better because it still does damage to enemy heroes, but it also gives you more consistent farming speed. The power cogs, though, has a higher potential payoff in pub games where people aren't good at dealing with the power cogs. And earlier I mentioned battery assault. To get the full damage, you need 10.5 seconds of just being next to that enemy hero. But power cogs, it is easier to pull people in, isolate them, and then like kick the power cogs at them, and then they're panicking and they're trying to like run away, but they're just running into multiple power cogs. The power cog scaling is actually really good because the original damage was balanced around the old power cogs, which you could only ever really hit one of, but now that you can hit like 2, 3, 4 power cogs on the same hero, it actually adds up to a ton of damage really quickly. If you're going to do this build, I recommend you max Rocket Flare next, because as part of running around kicking people with the or kicking the power cogs at people, you're not next to them for the battery assault damage, so it's not really going to do anything. This is why at a high level it makes way more sense to do the battery assault build, because people know how to dodge the power cogs and how to deal with it, so it's much easier to just use the power cogs to buy yourself an extra second or two and stay on top of them with the battery assault. But in your pub games, people will panic, and this build is really fun. Again, only do it if you have expanded armature. It is garbage if you're taking hookup. For your items, Clockwerk is a very positioning-based hero because you need to stay on top of people with battery assault, get them isolated with the power cogs, and then move quickly to kick the power cogs at them. You're also just a melee hero versus potentially ranged hero, so you have to like maneuver around the tree, stuff like that. So you can actually start with the win lace and then just like general stats, some regen. I recommend you're probably gonna have to buy like another tango, nether salve, things like that, just because you need to be healthy enough to stay on top of the enemy with battery assault or power cogs, whatever build you're going. And if you get chased away, you're going to get very little value out of your abilities. So you need to constantly be healthy and have enough regen. So don't be afraid to buy more regen. As those are covered, maybe as you get kills, then you can start working towards your early game items. Things like the wand, raindrops, very useful. If you just want to like rush tranquil boots, that can be okay too. Just make sure you have enough. Like you want to kind of like fight a lot in the laning stage. So build the small items to help you do that. And then as you have that covered, you get the tranquil boots. After that, it's up to you. You have a very flexible item build, but your mindset should be you are going to go into the fight with hookshot. You're going to cast your stuff, and then you're not going to try to like stay there until you die. You're going to try to back out because a lot of your abilities are pretty low cooldown. So you actually want to like weave in and out of the fight, cast the power cogs, disrupt it, get away, wait for a few seconds, come back in, do it again. So you'll notice a lot of the items that Clockwerk likes to build actually help him survive, so that after you hookshot into the enemy team, you have an extra barrier, you have extra move speed, you have magic resistance and a magic barrier, you have force staff. You could like jetpack over the trees, something like that, terrain, drums, right? There's a lot of items that help you go in, get out. But as you initiate for your team, maybe you don't need to get out, you can buff your teammates, right? You solar crest your carry, you drums your team to all run in with you. This is kind of what Clockwerk likes to do. He likes to start these early fights, which is something that is always lacking in pub games. This is one of the reasons I love Clockwerk, is because no matter what, you pick a backline support, they're all going to pick carries, and like, we don't have an initiator, right? Clockwerk can kind of do both. He can act as an initiator, but if you have other initiators on your team, you can just stay near your carry, buff them with the solar, the drums, things like that. And when the enemy team tries to get to your carry, you hookshot to them, stun them, drag them away from your carry with like the power cogs, things like that. So you can fit all types of roles as Clockwerk and just adjust your build from there. If you're having a great early game and scouting is going to be very important, the vision in team fights, you can rush in Aghanims or just get the Aghanims like after your first couple items. That can be good. If you are going to go Aghanims, I really recommend you have Rocket Flare maxed out by the time you finish the Aghanims. It will give insane scouting value, as well as actually contribute a decent amount of damage in team fights, because you can actually hit multiple heroes with one cast of Rocket Flare, because there's 3 of them, and it actually adds up a ton of damage. So that is a very greedy build you can do, only if you're having a very good early game. Blade Mail in pubs can be really good. Heroes like Phantom Assassin are very popular in pubs. So blade mail can be good. At a high level, you won't really see this too often because people know how to deal with the blade mail. So it's better to have just general utility on Clockwerk. But for the pubs, you could do it if you want. Another very aggressive build is rushing Orchid. Again, only if you're having a very good early game, but that will keep people stuck next to you. They can't use their mobility spells, and you just get a bunch of damage off with the battery assault, which will then be amplified by the Orchid. For Facets, you should just take expanded armature in most games, especially if you're new to Clockwerk. What it's going to do is increase the size of your power cogs. These are the original power cogs, and they don't affect people on the inside. They just bump people away coming from the outside. Or if someone is like far enough away, you can do something like this, where you bump them in a certain direction. What you'll see a lot of people do with the old Clockwerk build is like hook shot in and then like push them back to the team like that. So that can still be good if you do end up taking hookup, but expanded armature is much easier to use because it increases the size of the power cogs, which means you can pull people in from further away, and then as they try to get away, they get bounced back by the power cogs. So that means if you're doing the like max battery assault build, you're really just going to use power cogs to buy you an extra second of staying next to them, and then like as they escape through here, you follow, which is like at a high level what people will do. They realize once you hit one power cog, you can escape through that gap. A lot of pub players don't really realize that, and they panic and they just like stay in the circle even after they've been like knocked back, or they're still trying to like shoot a power cogs, and that is what gives you time to, if you do choose to do this build, like max this out, and then they're panicking inside, and you just like hit them with multiple power cogs. You do have to be careful of this. You'll notice, so this is like a Clockwerk tip here. You'll notice when he was standing here and I walked over here and I kicked him this way, it actually gave him an opening out, right? So that can be okay if you don't need like a bunch of power cogs value, but you can also do it where like, depending where you are in the lane, let's say Sniper wants to escape to the right. then even if I do what I just did and I come over here and I kick this at him and he bounces over here, if he runs to the left, maybe this is towards my team and my base, then that doesn't really help him. He still kind of has to turn back through the power cogs or walk to my team. So try to pick the direction you are going to try to kick back the cog in based on that. Or if he's trying to escape through this way, then you can like cut him off, and then as he's going through, he's gonna get like knocked back around. And you see there, when you do fortunately get that like double bounce around, that is when you get a lot of damage with power cogs, as well as like crowd control time, because they can't really do much while they're being knocked around. So your team is just like hitting them in that time. That gets you tons of kills in the laning stage. There's two things that you need to see for hookup to be good. One, there needs to be a lot of physical damage on the enemy team to make the armor worth it. And then two, you can't be the one to start the fight, because if you hook shot to the enemy team to start it, you get nothing out of hookup. It's a worthless facet. You need either an initiator on your team who's probably a melee hero to go in first, or the enemy team has a bunch of melee heroes that have to jump your team, and then you just wait. You let them jump your drow, your sniper, and then you hook up to the drow, the sniper, to help them out. One of those situations has to happen, and if it does, then this becomes a very cool facet, because you just get to like follow up stun, do a little bit, and then you'll see it's a very low cooldown because of the facet. You also get the mana return, so you're not like burning through all your mana right away. And what ends up happening is like axe jump someone, you hook up, you stun, you get a kill, and then the ability's off cooldown, you look to another part of the fight, you hook shot over there. To get the value, you just need a lot of like melee heroes to make it easiest on yourself. If there's a lot of ranged heroes on your team, you're less likely to have targets to jump to, or if there's a lot of summons that are going to block your way in. If your team has summons, that's fine, because like you actually still get the value when you hookshot your own allied creeps and summons, things like that. But if the enemy team has summons and they're just going to block your hookshot, if you hit an enemy hero, it's tough. It's also kind of unforgiving. Like hookshot can be very tough to land in a team fight. So even when axe goes in, but you're coming in from this angle, it can be tough, like in the middle of a team fight with all sorts of stuff happening, to hook shot to the axe and not the sniper. And if you just like mess it up a little bit and you accidentally, okay, so that time I did get to the axe. But like if you just mess it up a little bit and you hit sniper instead of the axe, then again, we get no value from our facet. That's why a lot of people prefer expanded armature, because it's just way easier to use and you get value from level 1 compared to hookup, which you need at least level 6, but you kind of want the later levels of hookup as well, because that's when it starts getting really good. So it's just a later game pickoff value that is like more niche. Just go expanded armature, make your life easier. A couple real quick pro tips for Clockwerk. You should pretty much never put a sentry on the high ground, because you have two abilities to check the high ground. One is Rocket Flare. I think that's the one most people realize, but Power Cogs actually also gives you vision, and you actually notice it's quite a lot of vision. So power cogs next to high ground cliffs if you need to check it, or when you're sieging high ground and you're just kind of like watching your teammates hit the stuff and you don't have vision, you can sometimes just like kick a power cog into the base. And I assume by the time you're sieging, you have the like 8 seconds. Like this is just a lot of time to have vision in fights. So even if you're not actually hitting an enemy here with the power cogs, just kicking them around during a team fight, if you have nothing else to do, can actually be really nice to give yourself vision in the fights. And then to make your life easier with hookshot, it's actually a pretty long cast range, which means a lot of times the way you actually play Clockwerk is you're actually watching a fight happen somewhere else and not your own hero. And depending on as the fight's moving, you're moving, that can make it a little tricky to know like where your hookshot actually is. So I really recommend you come over to your settings, go to the Dota Labs feature, scroll all the way to the bottom, and then this persistent range indicators. If you don't have this on, I recommend you turn it on. And then what we're gonna do is alt right click the hookshot. That leaves this permanent range indicator on, which when you're playing Clockwerk and you're just around your own abilities, it won't really distract you too much because it's barely at the edge of your screen, which as you level this up and it gets even longer range, you'll never even see it around your own hero on your own screen. But when you're watching a team fight happen over here and you're like rocket flaring in the trees, this makes it a lot easier to know if you're in range to hit a sniper you just found here, or like, can I join the team fight? Oh, I need to get a little closer, or I need to like force staff myself in. Keep in mind, you know, there might be creeps and stuff in between, so you still have to be aware of that. It'll still be good to like snap back to your own hero and take a quick check, but I do find this range indicator, I turn it on pretty much every game just to make my life a little bit easier to make sure I can hit my hook shot without hesitating. Just so you know, pulling them in with power cogs does not actually interrupt anything. So if they're teleporting and you do something like this, it doesn't actually stop the channeled ability. You have to have battery assault going, or you have to actually hit them with the power cog, which can be tricky to get the spacing right nowadays because you might accidentally pull them in. Oops. As you play Clockwerk, you get a feel for it. Or, especially if they're further away, you can actually just kick the power cog into them, right? To be safe, just make sure you get your angle right and then knock them if they're like teleporting. Can be a cool way to extend your reach, but if you miss, everyone is going to tip you and laugh at you, and it's like it's really embarrassing. So maybe practice the angles a little bit in a demo lobby, but it is a really cool thing to pull off. All right, let's talk through a couple gameplay examples real quick. The astute among you will notice that in the starting item build, there was actually still about 60 gold left over from your starting 600. If you can get your team to coordinate, buying a smoke to go for a first blood can be really powerful. Clockwerk is a very strong level 1 hero. So you can do something like this, where with your windlace and your smoke, as well as being a naturally fast hero, you can typically rush out and place an observer somewhere. It's kind of up to you exactly where you choose. This will help you in the lane a little bit more, or if you think the enemy's going to invade, you can do things like come to the enemy triangle, drop it on the observer cliff there, come over here, drop it here for like first bloods. It's kind of a high-level use of the observer. You actually don't have to place it there like that if you want. But going for these kind of plays at the start of the game, really good because Clockwerk is just so strong. In the lane, you're going to try to just maneuver around and find heroes like this. You see Dark Willow is on her own, and she's kind of near the creeps, which means if you use Battery Assault, she could just walk into the creeps, Beastmaster could walk up, send the boars over, and then you're not going to get a ton of value out of the Battery Assault. But at this point, Clockwerk is going to level Power Cogs and use Power Cogs on the Dark Willow. It's going to pull her in a little bit. You didn't really notice it there because she was already close to him, but even if she was further at the edge, she gets pulled in, and then as she runs away, he's going to try to knock cogs into her. You do have to be a little careful with where you use power cogs because terrain might block you from getting over there to kick it over, or like if you do it by the tower will actually shoot the cogs and kill it. The creeps can target the cogs and kill it. By the way, melee creeps actually aren't affected by the power cogs. Only units with mana are affected by power cogs, which means you can actually use the power cogs to secure the range creep if you want. Or another way you might see this is that the range creep will actually, like you'll kick the power cog at a hero, but you'll actually hit the range creep. So just kind of keep that in mind. It is something to be aware of. The power cogs also breaks trees, but not on the outside, you see. So like it can help you on the inside, especially if you want to clear an area for wards. But as you come over to kick the power cogs, like these trees are in the way for like these two power cogs. It's a little annoying. But you see he gets the double bounce on this. You don't always know where they're going to go. Like even me who's played a bunch of Clockwerk, it's difficult to figure out exactly where they go. So you just have to react quickly. That's why the windlace starting item is so helpful to make your way over to the power cogs since you only have 5 seconds at the start. And in this case, he was going to kick that one over, but it already got used when she bounced over. But you see, just on that power cogs, he got some good damage in. And the nice thing is, he burned some mana. It used to be even stronger before, but he just burned 70 mana off that Dark Willow. So Clockwerk got to use a spell, but Dark Willow just lost a spell pretty much and got no value out of it. It's not like she used a spell and hit him and it's like, okay, that's my mana. It's like, I didn't get to use a spell. I just got knocked around by the Clockwerk. So against heroes who are really dependent on mana, this power cog start and then looking for plays like this is very strong. You don't always have to hookshot to your target. Take this Pangolier. Clockwerk just dropped these wards. He sees the Pango. He knows Puck is nearby, currently jaunting for free regen, but if you hookshot to your enemies, you gotta make sure your teammates can actually follow up. So sometimes you can actually just wait near trees, let them walk into you, and then start using your abilities. And if they somehow manage to escape, you can then use hookshot to follow them depending where they go. So in this case, he's not gonna need it. He's just going to try to body block, right? The power cog bounce the Pango back, and then he's gonna try to get in front of wherever the Pango's going to keep him stuck in the battery assault. This time, he does have the Puck nearby to help out, so they're gonna grab a kill. He will use hookshot to just make sure there's no escape. You don't always have to use the hookshot depending on the situation, but it's pretty low cooldown, 60 seconds at level 1. Don't be afraid to throw this out. The damage, it's a little bit, but it's really just this 1.2 second stun that pierces BKB. Don't forget that. That's why I love this hero in pubs, right? You got the initiation, you got BKB piercing, you got multiple crowd control, ways to farm, split push. He's got everything. Real quick practical example of warding with Clockwerk. You can play sentries like this, because it's going to check this area, it's going to check this cliff, and then it can actually even check this area too. So you can use power cogs to maybe check this one, rocket flare to check this one, swap it, doesn't matter, but you're covering a lot with a sentry as opposed to putting it on the high ground. If you have sentries already set up, for example, he has one down here, sometimes the enemies try to do some high-level stuff, right? You don't have vision here, so they're like, oh, there's a sentry, and we put another observer. Doesn't even matter. You don't have to wait till you get close there. You can see Clockwerk will actually just rocket flare over in a second just to see, do they have vision? Oh, they don't have vision, so if we want to make a play through there, we could. If you don't, I mean, that's fine. You just kind of keep it in your head, like, there's no ward there. I'll check again later because I can. Really easily, 35 mana, 20-second cooldown at level 1. You know, that's kind of a longer cooldown, but later it'll be 14 seconds, only 50 mana. Very easy to just rocket flare constantly, places you have sentried, or maybe you just don't have observers. Right? It's like, oh, maybe we want to smoke gank here. Is there someone there? I don't know. Rocket flare, check, find them, head in. Here's a Roche fight that's about to happen. So Clockwerk was waiting in the pit to see if it would spawn. So now he's going to move out. So first, rocket flare for some vision near these trees. So if any heroes go in through here, you can still see it. He's going to just come in close. You don't have to hook shot right away. Don't panic hook shot. Just make sure you have the right target. It's going to be different every game, so that's easier said than done. But a really good use for it is BKBs, because your other abilities don't do anything to BKB, but the hookshot does pierce the BKB, so you can waste some of their time. For example, here, they're going to pop BKB, try to kill this egg, and you see him hookshot in. He doesn't quite hit the Weaver, but he does hit the Beastmaster, and that is going to literally keep the egg alive by one single hit. Let the egg go off, drop the cogs, right? As these BKB ends, he's going to get hit by the power cogs. So it's just a lot of annoying disruption, and you don't always have to try to, like, stay on top of a hero. If you can, great, but if not, look, the abilities are already back up, right? And that's why I was saying, you know, you step aside a little bit, maybe get healed by the tranquils, your items come back on, you step back in, another power cogs, another rocket flare, maybe that Weaver, you know, maybe you're still trying to chase that Weaver. Where is he? You rocket flare ahead, try to get vision. Okay, he's too far, give up. Oh, we can actually find him, you know, chase, right? I guess it's obvious, like every hero wants to stay alive through fights, but Clockwerk especially, because he has these low cooldown abilities, it really is good if you can just constantly go in and out of the fights to keep throwing in these abilities. If you're playing Clockwerk and you're gonna unblock your small camp, usually I'd recommend you put it in the back here because it's harder for the enemy supports to get to if they contest this later. But for Clockwerk, because you have two abilities that you'll get pretty early to check high ground, you can actually put it on the top half to get this. Now, in this case, they actually just use the trick where you kind of like walk into the cliff and sometimes you see it. But if you place it like right in the center, that won't work. And you can use your power cogs or your rocket flare to check this later. So just some extra value you can get out of the sentry, but it is a little bit riskier because it's much easier for the enemy support to get. You can be very annoying with Clockwerk, intercept the enemies. You do have to be a little careful, but you can do annoying stuff like this, make them late to the lane. You try to like kick power cogs into them. And keep in mind, you saw Timbersaw did kill this one. He got 18 gold. So you do have to be careful of not feeding power cogs when they have easy ways to deal with it. But by delaying them from getting to the lane, you see that SF has already established creep equilibrium. So they're in a good spot because of that. Here's an example of why expanded armature is so useful in the lane. Old expanded armature or old power cogs would not be able to do anything about this Timbersaw. But with this expanded armature, you see he actually pulls the Timbersaw in combination with the windlace, potentially a blood grenade if you needed that extra slow. This helps you just walk up to people to do things. You don't need your ultimate. You don't need a gap closer like Tusk Snowball, Ice Shards. You're able to just walk to people by nature of being fast and then pull them in with the power cogs. And then because a lot of times people don't expect to get pulled, they're still clicking ahead, which means they immediately get hit by a power cogs. High level players will then, you know, escape that way. It's not a perfect ability. Nothing is. But it's still really good. You see they almost killed the Timbersaw here off that. He does just barely escape. Just missed that raise, too bad. Whether you're position 4 or 5, Clockwerk is great at roaming because of the expanded armature we just talked about, and also because you're so fast. You're buying windlace early, boots pretty early. So do try to come for the runes once you're able to. I'd say like definitely the power runes, and you can do annoying things like this. Use the power cogs, just like knock people away, secure the runes for your team. And in really clutch situations, you can do things like this, where you pull in the hood. You see how like far she was? Ridiculous. She gets pulled in, or maybe you don't quite pull her in, but she gets bounced by the power cogs. This one is very close on the timing, so it's very fortunate this worked out. He does actually end up getting the wisdom rune and the hoodwink kill. Other times, if you think an invis hero like Bounty is nearby, the power cogs can hit invis heroes. So you can stand in a way. The power cogs always spawn in the same formation, so once you play it a little bit, you'll get used to it. stand in a way that the power cog will spawn exactly on the rune, here or here, the bounty runes, whatever. And then any hero who is trying to walk into it to take it will get hit by the power cog. So you can just spawn it like a second before the actual rune spawn, and then anyone going for it, invis, you have no idea, they will hit the cog, they will bounce away, you will get the rune guaranteed. Another quick warning example, sentry on the low ground, come over, rocket flare the high ground. Make sure you're close enough. Like, you might rocket flare from afar, and then you're like, oh shit, you gotta walk over there, kill it. So stand close and then do the rocket flare. This fight does not quite work out for them, but just an example of what you can do. When you do need to be the initiator, you can use rocket flare to scout what is going on, to help you find your target, and then hook shot in. In this case, they do go in, just the combo does not quite happen. But you see for a moment there, he had 3 people in the power cogs, right? Like, that's a really strong initiation tool to have as just a position 5 or a position 4. You can use your power cogs to break trees and then actually set up new warding spots. If you want some ideas on that, I do have a video on it. But keep in mind, if you only do that, then people are gonna get ideas like, that's a common spot to put a ward if the trees are broken. They're gonna check it. So you kind of have to fake it out a couple different places around the map. But it can be a really cool trick to have in your arsenal. If you happen to buy Jetpack or get it from the Tormentor, a good way to use it is during a smoke, because you get flying vision. He is activating the jetpack here in case any enemies are here. They're gonna see him hiding behind the tree line, stuff like that. So it can be a really useful way to use jetpack. Another way to use it is if you have vision from like a ward or someone else is going in, you hook shot in, jetpack, fly away from the enemy team over trees, things like that. It's just a very useful tool, just the flying vision in particular. But keep in mind, you can't end the jetpack early, but here's another example, right? Sees the enemies, jetpacks away, reinitiates. Nice combo for the team. I didn't even know this was gonna happen, guys. I was talking about jetpack. Oh, maybe it's not so nice. Bristleback's bristlebacking them. It's working out. It's okay. But just a lot of cool ways you can use jetpack, but you can't stop it. So it can be a little awkward. You can cast abilities while using a jetpack. So if it just happens to line up, great. But you can't like kick power cogs around, things like that. So just keep in mind, if there's something else you need to do, you're gonna have to do it while like forced in an awkward turning, or just don't use jetpack yet. Almost forgot to say, Clockwerk does have a taunt, so make sure you're using this a lot. You can also fake your ult if you want, but I don't know, it's not that scary, and you'll look silly if you accidentally launch it and put it on cooldown, so just be a little careful. Thank you for watching, guys. Let me know what you think of this video. Let me know like what you'd like in the format, things that you would find helpful, because I've been lazy about hero guides, but I'm gonna try to make more of them going forward. So, let's find something we all like to do. So let me know. And if you're watching this the day it comes out, we're going to be spamming Clockwerk on stream. So all the links in the description, the stream, the hero guide, if you want, all of that's down there to come watch me use the taunt and miss my hook shots and all that. Thanks. Bye.